Welcome back to the podcast. Today, you guys know that I've got one of my favorite friends, one of my best friends in the world, who really is a industry leader in how to grow brands. I mean, Daniel Batty has grown the biggest brands in the country, some of the fastest growing brands. And today's podcast, if you're looking to grow your brand, he's going to give you the insights on how he does it, right? Where he does it. And he's going to talk about this new brand, Swig, that he's growing. And I'm all excited about where they're going and this phenomenon. Daniel, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here, Anthony. As always, I appreciate that. To your point, we've been friends for a very long time. Well, actually, a short time, but it's felt like a long time. We just have bonded at a deep level. So I appreciate being on the podcast again. Thank you.
We've gone through some amazing work together. One of my favorite weekends together with you is the time we spent out in Utah, where we went to, we fly in, he and I and another friend got together, Jeff Previty, and we start the weekend by going to the grocery store, right? And we get the healthiest foods we could find. And then we spend the entire weekend on how to do personal development. And I mean, it really was a challenge, right? Jeff pushed us pretty hard.
Yeah. No, it's a blessing. You know what? And he was relentless. So it's really interesting. I actually shared about that weekend with quite a few people. And I talked about, obviously, the great food. We had great food, great conversations. We journaled. We did yoga, we hiked, we cold plunged, which was the bane of my existence the entire time I was there, but it's actually a pretty awesome experience. But no, just a great time. We had a really great time together, and we laugh a lot. That was just probably the icing on the cake. So,
well, and I think that goes to what we're going to talk about today, Swig. And, look, when men get together, or when we got together, and we were really focusing on how to improve our lives, right? Like, the old days, that could have been a completely different weekend, right? How debaucherous we could have gotten, how drunk, and how much, what kind of obnoxious things we could have done drinking and old ways of being. And, all of a sudden we're coming together to find a real great way of being it. And the brand that you're building now, Swig, is in that same realm, right? It's now breaking through this whole new, these cool drinks that they're creating and creating a phenomenon that I haven't seen in a long time.
Yeah, no, it's pretty amazing company. Nicole Tanner founded this company in about 2010, and she came from the farm. So it's really interesting. I came from Dutch Bros, where Travis Boersma was a third generation farmer, and the government kind of shut down his farm, and he found his way to develop Dutch Bros coffee. But it's kind of the same story with Swig. She was raised on a farm. She would go to Sonic every day and get her drink that it was called the Founder, and it's with I'm going to get this wrong, but it's Diet Coke and lime and I think cream. But she'd kind of develop that drink. She goes, wouldn't it be interesting if I just had a drive-through coffee shop where families could come through? They didn't have to unbuckle the kids, get out of the car. We could just drive through, grab their drink, and go. And that's what kind of started the whole phenomenon with what was called the dirty soda. Now it's kind of a beverage company. They do a lot more beverages and things, but it's a pretty interesting concept, and it's delicious. I mean, to some people, they're like, hey, wait, how can you make a soda any better? Swig has found a way to do that. Nicole and the entire team and staff, and they're constantly developing. I sit in the office, and they're bringing new drinks all the time, and it's fun to taste them. It's a pretty phenomenal group, and what they're developing is just awesome. So it's kind of fun.
I knew it was going to be crazy when my daughter, Gabriella, comes in and she goes, Dad, you're talking to Swig. You got to know what your dad, you got to, and she's telling me all about it. It is a TikTok phenomenon. It is on all the social media. It has really become this viral sensation where, kids are getting into it. And it's fun, right? It really started in Utah around the LDS community, but it really has spawned out across the country in this viral sensation that really kids, adults have found another way of having, a little afternoon pick me up, a little morning wake up. They're changing from hot coffees and hot teas, which, look, I'm a coffee fan, but today they've got other alternatives out there, and I think that's kind of what's special about it is that we continue to change and grow. And so you get over there. They ask you to come in and start to put this together. And I know you've grown some amazing companies. And today we're going to really get into a little bit about where you're going, how you're starting to formulate the company to do what you do and grow it by the speed by which you've grown other brands. And I think folks out there, if you're going to really, today is a great day for you to listen to Daniel and start to learn the process by which you start to set a brand up to grow it the way he's done other brands. And I think you'll get a lot of value out of this in watching the process by which Daniel grows brands. So let's just get started about, so you guys started in 2010, right?
Yes.
All right. And today you currently have how many stores?
82 locations.
82 locations. And you've got 8 franchise groups and 74 corporate stores.
That's correct. Yeah.
Now
and then we're looking at finishing out the year with about 9 more additional corporate shops and about 14 additional franchise. So right. we should just be just over 100 by the end of the year.
I mean, that's a big deal. Like that, every brand we've grown, we've gone through the stages of, right. You got the first 5, then the first 25, right. And that, yes. That brings in itself a whole bunch of chaos.
Yeah. Oh, without a doubt. There's a whole set of challenges. It's easier, I think, to grow a store once you get to about 10 locations, but those first 10 locations are just critical. You're trying to figure out the formula, trying to figure out your branding and things of that nature. And then even just kind of where they are now. When I came on board, I mean, the branding piece is awesome. I mean, they have great branding. Again, the social media presence is awesome. But we just need to tighten it up a bit. So that was one of the first things that we kind of focused on. We kind of just went through and took a look again at what it is we're trying to have the brand represent. And so we looked at all the signage and things of that nature. The signage is the cheapest marketing, that you can buy for a brand. And you want the signs as big as they can. You want them to be predominant. You want them to be people to remember when they drive by. And you also want something that pulls them into the business, right? And so we're kind of looking at it right now, like what is Swig? If we go into a new market, what is Swig? Without just the social media presence, what are we doing to pull people into the brand as a whole? So we've kind of made some adjustments and we're trying some things out on the branding side. And then in addition, we want to make sure that the building is consistent. When you drive by, it's a Swig, you're going by. We have a lot of end caps that we build currently. We are doing some ground ups. We're going to do out of about 35 shops next year, probably about 15 of those will be ground up. The rest are end caps. So we are trying to look at what's going to differentiate us from all the other brands out there. And actually, it's harder to do with an end cap, but I think that with what we've come up with, it's a really it'll be kind of something that's really predominant for the brand as a whole, and also just will allow people to, when they're driving by, to say, "Hey, that is a Swig. I'm going there. I'm going to go grab a drink." So
a little bit of in creating the brand identity, you've got signage. Now you start to look at either a freestanding building, which obviously you can brand that how you want to brand it. Right. And then, so as I look at some of the portfolio, there's a variety of those, and it looks like they've tried some different styles of buildings for that. And are you continually to start to develop, what does a ground up building look like?
Yeah, 100%. So, it's really interesting. It's small things. It's lighting, right? It's lighting, how you like the building up and either the building or the site or things of that nature. It has to be something that's a draw. When you go into production mode, which we're kind of headed that direction, our goal is to hit about 1,400 shops in the next 8 years. When you go into production mode, you need to create a building that's a production building that you can repeat over and over and over again. If you have these one-offs, it just creates more work for architects, for the construction team, for the operations team, things of that nature. So some of the things that we did, I have a great team, by the way. There's only, it's really interesting leaving Dutch Bros with 22 people on my team and coming to Swig with 5. It's kind of hard because we're all our own admins. We're doing all our own work. So it's kind of interesting, but it's the funnest place to be. I think being a builder in this business is the best. We can talk a little bit about that later, but just kind of coming in and we pulled the operations team in, we pulled the maintenance team in. We pulled the branding team in and we sat around a table and we said, what is it we're trying to accomplish here? And we came up with a fantastic design. I think the one piece that people forget is when you're developing a brand and you're building a building, you're handing that building off to your facilities and maintenance team. and you just kind of forget about it. And that's the one issue that I've seen through every brand that I've worked for. And it's something that I try to incorporate now every time that we try to grow, is to make sure that what we're handing you is something that you can easily maintain and that's repeatable in the maintenance. I don't want 5 different air conditioning brands and 4 different under-counter refrigerators. We want all the equipment to be the same, that's consistent, that's durable, that lasts, to make their job as easy as possible. And that actually comes from something my father told me years ago. He said, try to make the person's job in front of you easy, and especially the person's job behind you easier. And it's something that's just been seared into my brain, that like, hey, my job here is obviously to grow the brand and do things consistently, but also to make the job easier on the people that work for me or with me.
Yeah.
So
Well, I think there's so much insight, to growing a brand, and look, the people in front of you, look, getting a consistent building that a reproducible architect anywhere in the country can reproduce quickly and easily with minimal site adaptation needed, right? Where the base building itself, and not only that, it also goes to the real estate deal. And we're going to talk a little bit about all of those here in a second. But, one of the things that I think you hit on that really, got me excited was, and we were talking about this, a couple of weeks ago, was first cost versus total cost, right?
yes.
When we stop looking at just today and going, all right, look, I got to open these things. And there've been brands where I did that, right? I was told, hey, look, we're thinking 5 years ahead. That's it. We're just trying to get to IPO. And then you go look at those buildings or that brand who never expected to be here 10 years later, and they're tired and run down. In fact, the longevity of the brand didn't make it. My big belief is that because they were built so cheap in the beginning, or just so no thought to the long-term maintenance and support of the people that are going to have to run this forever, then they get tired and outdated pretty quickly. And you're taking that approach today that, hey, how do I build this thing to be a bulletproof building that'll be easy to maintain, that'll look fresh, and it'll be easy for the operations team to be able to, manage this building and keep it looking healthy for a long time.
Yeah, amen. It's really interesting. If you kind of go look at the way that Chinese companies build brands, they're thinking out 100 years. In America, we think out, to your point, we think out 5, 10, 15, 20 years. I mean, obviously our leases are 20, 10-year leases with 2 5-year options. So 20 years, we're thinking out 20 years. They're thinking out 100 years. And so in kind of understanding that, I'm like, how can we plan for that? I'll give you a good example. And we've talked a little bit about flooring. Flooring, you think something that's so simple. There's a lot of different pour-in floors and epoxy flooring and things of that nature. I've seen them all. I mean, I've yet to find that one that's just like perfect for the beverage industry. If you you can go walk into a McDonald's that's 40 years old, and it'll still have the same tile on the floor. Hopefully it's still not there. But a lot of times, there are some old McDonald's out there and you have the 40-year tile. But I mean, it's bulletproof. I mean, it's there and it's lasting. And so we have really large discussions with, I have 3 people from the contracting side on my team, and we have really big discussions around flooring. And you think that's something so simple, but I'm a huge believer in tile floors just because the durability, it lasts, right? You can get epoxy grouting now. There's some different technologies in the industry that make it so important. So,
well, let's dive backwards a little bit. So as we look at a brand, and as we look at Swig, and you're looking at where we're going forward, let's just talk a little bit about. I want to kind of work our way from the outside in. First, as you start to look at understanding where Swig needs to go, and what's the perfect demographic model. How do you guys start to, and who's on the team that's working on creating a demographic model to understand, all right, where's a perfect location for a Swig, right? Where is that location? What do I need to have a Swig be successful? And because I've worked with some brands who didn't do that, right? I remember
yes.
the early days of one of the sandwich chains that has a couple of J's in it. They would take whoever got it, wherever they want to go. And that worked at first, right? But then all of a sudden, tier 2 and tier 3 development of the brand made it really difficult because they were cannibalizing on some of the marketplaces. Maybe a marketplace like Chicago for that brand could have taken 50 stores or 60 stores, but then all of a sudden now we're putting stores in the wrong location. And we when we look at trade areas, or so we look at a marketplace and then we look at individual trade areas inside of that marketplace, all of a sudden the placement of the wrong location, I now cannibalize that. When you guys are looking at development of where I'm putting deals and how we're looking at market plan development, how is that that logic coming together?
So it's really interesting you say that. We've actually been guilty of that, right? Especially probably in the Utah marketplace, although we're doing very well. We probably could be doing better if we maybe space them out a little further, maybe had some more A+ sites. Again, when you're starting a brand, you're you're growing with the money you have, right? And so sometimes you're maybe not picking the best sites because you can't afford the best sites, and you're uncertain if you're going to hit the AUVs to be able to support it. And so now that the brand is kind of moving forward, we actually just completed a white space analysis with Placer AI, and we're going through that data right now. But we've already made some changes as to what we're going to do. We had about 35 sites in the pipeline. We just killed, I think 11 of them last week, for that exact reason. We were not in the locations where we wanted to be, maybe not serving the demographic with the density we wanted. And, they were not A+ sites. They were B sites at best. And, so we're really trying to change that focus to make sure. Yeah.
Look, and I think that's one of the big problems is that you got a lot of times, especially with the franchise growth or new marketplace growth, all of a sudden you've got a broker who I'm not putting down brokers. I love brokers. Look, brokers out there, I'm not mad at you, but a lot of times they're more interested in the deal than the long-term demographic. They're not having to run that deal forever. They may have a relationship with a broker or a developer. They may have a relationship. Look, I'm looking to, when I'm looking at a new marketplace, I'm looking to make sure that our brands aren't being driven by a broker. In other words, I haven't met a broker yet who doesn't have my perfect location in their portfolio already. And I'm like, all right. That can't be that way. I often want to make sure that we identify the corners that we want to be on. And then we're saying to the broker, hey, look, I want to be on this corner, and here's why, and know why we want to be there. And then have them go and negotiate deals in that marketplace, as opposed to, I'm here in Chicago and I'm just waiting for someone to call me up one day and go, hey, look, we're building this floating island out in the middle of Lake Michigan, and we're waiting for your brand to be the, sell me the story that I'm not lying. Look, I love them because we need to get deals done. But I also want to know that we're guiding them to go find a more rifled approach to a deal making, as opposed to the shotgun approach that sometimes just to get a deal done, or my judgment is sometimes to get a commission. And I want to make sure that I'm the dog wagging the tail in the deal, as opposed to the tail wagging the dog. And I think the same thing happens with making sure that we're looking at enough deals in the marketplace so we don't fall in love with a bad deal just because we want to get a deal done.
Yeah. And listen, it's really interesting. We're in the process of reviewing for director of real estate. And let me tell you a little bit about our ownership as a whole. So Nicole Tanner founded the business in 2010. There's a company called Savory Brands that actually helped build the brand up. What they do is they build the shops to about 50 stores to show proof of concept, and they either spin it off, go public, whatever. So they spun Swig off to Larry H. Miller, which is one of the largest financial institutions in Utah. Yes. Really great brand, really supportive of the vision, great family people, just a really good company as a whole. And we're interviewing for a director of real estate. And one of the questions that have come up, and this is actually from Brad Giles at Savory, him and I have been interviewing together, and he asked the question, what makes a good broker, right? Because, at the end of the day, to your point, I mean, is the guy trying to make a deal? We want somebody that's been embedded in the market, that understands where growth is happening, that is a partner, first and foremost. Yeah, if they're not a partner, to your point, they're just going to bring you every deal because they're trying to get their commission. We need to sort through those people really quickly and move on and find the person that actually has our brand at heart and understands where it is we want to go and is fighting for that. And they have a lot of clients. I understand that, but we have to make our brand appealing enough and cooperative enough, if that sounds correct. And there's a lot to that the broker will fight for us to get it to the good sites. So I was very fortunate at Dutch Bros. The brand had such a great reputation that people fought for us to be in their locations, not because it was maybe the best financial decision for them, but they were loyal to our brand and they were loyal to the business. And we've actually had that at Swig. We've had developers say, "Hey, look, my daughter drinks your drink, and I want your Swig in our development." Those are the best kind of deals, honestly, to work through. So
Yeah.
we want to be there; they want us there. I mean, you can't fix that marriage, right? That's the perfect communion.
So, all right. So now we get a demographic model. We get an understanding of where our perfect client is, or what our perfect client looks like, and our demographic. Now we start to go out and look at deals. You know, a lot of times there are differentiation costs between each of the deals that we look at, and structuring. The plan you're going on, right? You talk about having kind of a plan and a process for how you look at a deal and the financial structures of that. Let's dive into that a little bit. How do you start to um, look at each location and create a financial model and understand, all right, how's this going to work for us? Who sets who sets that? How do you put the initial budgets together? Who on operations signs off on? Hey, how much business they can do in that marketplace? How do you come to the logic when you're looking at this many sites?
I wish there was a magic formula. You know what? It's really interesting, right? I always say this, like we could have all the metrics that just look incredible for a location and they fail, right? And
Yeah.
so it happens.
Yeah.
And I've been on the opposite side where I always tell this story. Carl's Jr. franchisee, McMinnville, Oregon. I walked out. It's at End Cap. There's a Subway next door. And I'm standing here looking at this store going, "Hey, Joe, I love you." I said, "But I don't know why you would put a Carl's Jr. here." I still talk to him this day and I'll say, "Joe, how's your McMinnville store doing?" He goes, "Still the number one site in the system for him." So you know what? It is. It's one of those, sometimes it's a feel, right? I think it's important, that you go and you sit on a site and watch the traffic that's coming through and see the type of customers that are driving by and see what kinds of cars they're driving. I mean, on the demographic side, obviously you have their age, their disposable income and things of that nature. Trying to create a pro forma that identifies all those things is hard to do. We are getting better at it as a brand. I think we will have crossed that threshold here much faster than maybe we even did it, in my past employer. But we're really digging in deep to that. We have a real estate committee meeting every other week where we sit down and we talk through these sites. We have a real estate manager that goes and drives the sites and takes a look and understands the trade area and things of that nature. We are getting really good at being able to decipher, what sites will work the best for our brand. And it is, to your point, it's a lot of data, but there is a little bit of a feel to it. You got to have that feel, and you got to understand what's coming. Like, what's the growth look like in the years ahead? So I think that's really important.
I'm not going to get us off on this tangent, but
Yeah.
I know that AI will really be a real leader for us going forward. That being able to look at a demographic model from maybe 10,000x what we are today. Our ability today to have traffic count and income circles and just density and population, all the ones we have taken. Let's call it here at best we're 150 points in a demographic model at best.
Yeah.
The truth is we're probably 50 at best. But let's say that the future of where AI goes and understanding where we could do best and why we could do best in there. My belief is that really that model will continue to get dramatically better to be able to look at traffic counts and soccer games and first meal, second meal, just the way that we'll be able to look at demographics as we are gathering more and more of these data points. I think that's exciting to me to see that the future will have us have a lot less misses, because we'll be able to look at a marketplace with a much, just a much brighter, model than before. And I think that's coming. It's just still in development. Every one of the real estate demographic folks that we interview, they're still putting that together. They're all moving quickly to grab them. But I can see a future where they're able to pick sites much faster and with a lot more intelligence. That's exciting.
No, it's great stuff, and I'm going to give you a quick plug. I have looked at a lot of your podcasts, and you've had some pretty amazing people talking about the future of AI in this business, and probably, quite honestly, I mean, I know we're friends, and this may come off as a little, maybe as a little underhanded, but it's not. You're truly what you're doing for the business as a whole, in just construction development, and the people that you've had on your podcast are the great minds of the industry that are going to drive us forward. And I think that we're right there. I mean, I'll give you a really great example of that. You and I have talked about modular builds in the past on this podcast. It's not perfected. It's right there.
Yeah.
You know what? I listen. I want to do it so bad.
Yeah.
We've had some issues with it. I think there's a couple firms that have a pretty good understanding of what needs to be done, and they've kind of worked out some of those issues. But at the end of the day, I think it still has maybe a 5-year, change, where it's just going to be in 5 years, we're going to be right there, because it's moved dramatically from, I don't want to name company names, but from the tilt-up buildings we did 25 years ago, we've talked about, to what they're doing today. It's amazing stuff. They use modular all over the world. It just hasn't grabbed as good a hold here in the United States. I am at some point going to travel to go see what are they doing differently than we're doing here, because there's got to be something.
Well, it's the idea, and then breaking through the idea, and we've both seen it, right? I mean, modular buildings for sure. Look, having a controlled environment where I can use materials to their nth degree. Look, if when we stick build, we have 10% of everything that shows up on a job site end up in a dumpster, right? Yes. And then we're plagued by weather and conditions. All of the impact of that cost us, and our business muscles through it, and we could see a future where that'll change. But we're breaking through all kinds of ideas, like local codes and analysis and all the things that it takes. Modular build, right? Growing the idea. That chasm that we're jumping across right now is still getting developed, and it's amazing. Look, it's going to be amazing. It's just we've got to continue to chew glass a little bit here to get through and break through the ideas, and we're going to mess it up, and look, that took longer than we would have stick built. I mean, we just the way we order things, the way we design it, all of that stuff is getting developed, and we just have to have the fortitude to go. We know, look, at our gut level, we both know that it's a great idea. That moving that forward is great. It's just that in solving the things we have to solve to get there, do we have the fortitude to do that? And I believe we do. And I believe our industry has to. And the conversation that we're having have got to continue to raise that to the surface and say, look, we can do this. And it's going to be a little bit hard of an idea, but we know that at the end, we're going to make the build it construction way smarter, really help impact our environment way better, and really be able to deliver, especially to an owner. Look, a modular building that can come off of a truck in a much, faster way, being able to go from deal making to producing revenue faster is what we want to give the owners, right? We want to find a predictable way to give them a deliverable that both gives them a budget they can count on and timing that they can expect. And the more and more that we do that in creating ideas, I think that's ultimately the ninja or the mastery of great development experts like yourself. That's why I love having you on here, because I think we continue to try to master the ideas. All right, how are we going to build a brand faster, better, and smarter than we did? Than we built the Coliseum. So
yeah, amen.
It's exciting. So now you're looking at you got your demographic.
Can I just add one more thing?
Yeah.
Real quick? I apologize to interrupt you. You know what? In my head, it just kind of going down that path. I visualize a time when, obviously jurisdictionally, things are changing all the time, right? for requirements for electrical, plumbing, all that. Wouldn't it be great if all that information was able to be uploaded to a manufacturing facility? That manufacturer could say, hey, I know what that jurisdiction wants and needs. But the jurisdictions need to buy in on that modular side, which is a lot. That's part of the issue as well. But to be able to upload all that stuff and it just is manufactured at a facility to meet that requirement, it comes out, they know it's dialed in, because I mean the construction tolerances in manufacturing are going to be nil. And to your point, the waste is going to be, everybody's talking about, much greener environment and being environmentally conscious. I mean, that's a great way to build out, a building and things of that nature. Now, here's the downside of that. It's affecting the entire GC environment, right? They're losing out all that profitability, all that labor, things of that nature. So the shift is coming. How we react to that shift, I think, is going to be challenging. I just wanted to add that component before you went on to your next piece, because I think that's what I keep thinking in the back of my mind. Okay, how's that transition going to happen? A, and B, who's it going to affect along the way? We as a brand,
let's dive into that a little bit. Let's challenge that, because I think that's for sure a conversation that stops us a little bit, right? And let's just play it in a little bit. And really, guys, I want us to challenge the conversation in a healthy way, right? Yeah. Because look, as a general contracting world, the first thing everybody goes, we go prefab. What does that mean for me? I'm like, I'll lose my job. And there's a lot of that fear that goes, no, we can't do any of that, right? We can't have prefab buildings. Hey, we can't do self-driving cars. We can't, like, when we do this technology change, I'm going to lose my job. Right. And it's a big fear. Exactly. That I really do believe that actually stops our ability to go forward. And look, at one point we answered phones 555 Chicago, right? And we had this operator, right, into the little switchboard. And then when I was a kid, they had those, right, a round little keypad, and then we went to
awesome.
Right. Then we had the digital one, right?
Yeah.
And today I've got a cell phone in my pocket. I have no home phone. And if you would have said that to me when I was a kid, that you're not going to have a home phone, you'd be like, no way. Look, you can't trust those portable phones. And and along the way, we've done fine, and people have plenty of jobs, and it's going to evolve. And in that's what I really feel is the ultimate gift, right? Instead of holding on and saying, hey, I'm not going to, maybe I'm a taxi driver today. I don't want to jump into Uber. No way. I've got this shield. I want to defend my shield. I want to stay a taxi driver. And I mean, I get it. Like, you paid, $200,000 for a Chicago taxi shield, and becoming an Uber driver, just it's scary.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, and you think of driverless cars and things of that nature. You think, you're like, oh my gosh, you know what? We may not own a car. We may just have a call service that come pick you up, and we're not gonna be able to just hop in a car and drive away immediately. I don't know how far away that is, but it's probably coming, right? Which is going to affect everybody. And but let's look at the positive side of that. Think if you're an elderly person or a handicapped person that you can't necessarily get in your car and go do that. Now you're gonna have a service that's going to come pick you up, that potentially can get you to where you need to go with safely and efficiently. I mean, I think there's so many great trade-offs, right? And it's trying to find the great trade-offs. I think even in our industry, okay, if A, then B. It is scary. Change is scary, right? I'm especially as you get a little older.
Yeah, right.
Get a little older now.
Both of us.
So I'm looking ahead, going, "Wow, man!" I try to be as open minded as I can. I've talked about that. I always say I have a no ego policy, right? I love to be wrong. Please challenge me. Let's have a discussion around it, because there's a good possibility I'm wrong, and it's not because I possibly wasn't right at one time, but the world has changed so much that maybe today I'm wrong. And so it's kind of trying to understand that transition in business as a whole. It gets a little difficult. So got to be open-minded and have a great sense of humor.
Well, you're right on it. And I think that's what makes you the great leader, is that you can stay. The fear is what blocks us, right? The idea that we can't do that, no way. And that shuts us down from, as a great leader that you are. I think why one of the reasons why is that you stay cheerful, and that continues to allow you to bring the millions of ideas of the universe to everything that you're solving, right? And you stay in that space of, hey, I'm wrong. I could change. You're always looking for it as a possibility, as opposed to I can't do that. There's like, that certainty of, and that certainty almost blocks opportunity. And I think that's why you've built these brands the way you have, the way you lead the people that you lead. I mean, the teams that you build. I mean, anybody that I've ever knows Daniel and the teams that he leads, they're every single one of them that I've ever met has said the best team I've ever been on. And I think it's kind of like you change the way that you led people, allow them to lead and allow them to shine light, and you shine light as a leader on them. And as opposed to the old days where leaders were like, I take all the credit and they do all, you lead a whole different way. And I think that's the same mentality that we got to look at it with how we're doing things. Like, hey, there might be another way of doing this. It's going to scare me a little bit to be vulnerable. But there's an opportunity on the other side of it that maybe, something I can't see from standing today.
Yeah. Well, and you and I talk about that. Like, man, if you're looking at me to be the smartest person in the room, you're probably in the wrong room. Right? So you know what? I am okay not being the expert. A friend of mine years ago said, an expert, an X is a has been, and a spurt is a drip under pressure. So he goes, you don't want to be you never want to be the expert. So it's kind of just stuck with me. But no, it's it is. I mean, I think that I'm a very blessed man. We talk about this, you and I, quite frequently. I've been put in a role currently with Swig where I don't need to prove myself other than getting the job done, right? I think that our job is to obviously A, get the job done, but B, love and lift, right? We want to lift the people up that are maybe, 10, 15, 20 years my junior, to get them to this level at some point in their career. And honestly, I mean, I think that a lot of that comes, quite honestly, from Travis Boersma, who's the founder of Dutch Bros. He had the idea of compelling futures. And the idea is we're here to lift the next generation up, to make them bigger, better, stronger. His philosophy was to make them good business leaders, good family people, and strong leaders in our community. And I think that is just so important as an overall whole. We are in a very much we're a lot more selfish in our society today. And I think that we need to be a lot more giving. We've got so much. I mean, we are, as a nation, we're such a blessed nation. And we need to share that across far and wide, right? And all demographics and socioeconomic and demographic. I mean, we need to be constantly lifting others to great things. And I think that is honestly what has defined this country as a whole. And that's why I really, like I said, it may sound like a little much, but I really love what you're doing, Anthony, because you are taking the development industry and you're challenging it and you're asking the hard questions and you're saying, hey, how can we make this better? We're a country of invention and of, advancing technology and innovation and things like that. You look at a guy like Elon Musk. I don't know if Elon Musk could have done this in any other nation. The man is a savant. I mean, he's an incredible human being. And I think that those are the people we need to celebrate. And for some reason, I mean, yeah, you know what? He probably says some goofy things on X, but I'm sure I say some goofy things. I just don't
come on.
do it publicly. Well, hopefully I don't do it publicly. But no, at the end of the day, we need to embrace that. And like I said, I think you're doing that on the Future Factory. And personally, I think that's the best thing you could be doing.
Well, I think we look at guys like Elon and go, hey, look, there are geniuses about it, right? And also there's some stupidity about it, which, by the way, I can relate to, right? There are times when I get scared or say something stupid, and it is not my most articulate self that I just get in a fear space and I say something stupid. But look, I'll dive into that. And look, we could challenge that a lot about our humanness. I want to get back into the development world. And as you start as you start to look at your construction side, and getting some, the ability to look at each real estate deal from so I'm going to shift back. I'm sorry for making.
I got off track. I apologize.
No, but here, you and I can have a whole nother podcast on human development. I just watching you and the men in my life that's why I love getting together, because it challenges me as a human. And I think it's important. But I also I think people are also looking for why and how you're growing this brand and why you've grown other brands, how you've done that. Right. I think it's, how do you start to structure when you're looking at your building, an end cap prototype. Now, why end cap? Let's just talk about why end cap. Why not mid building? Why are you picking end caps? What's the benefit of an end cap for you?
Yeah, I'll be quite honestly, it's branding. We actually have a few shops that are mid cap, and they're doing okay. But I mean, at the end of the day, an end cap gives you a couple, two sides of branding, maybe a little more ownership of the drive-through and things of that nature. We actually have a drive-through in St. George where it has two drive-throughs down the same alleyway. It's two lanes. We're mid cap, and there's a pizza place that's an end cap. And so, right before you turn into the pizza unit, you actually drive out. It's the exit for the Swig. So there's kind of a merge point there that you've got to be conscientious about. It's working well. I mean, everybody understands it that lives in the area, and they know how it works, and so they kind of manage it accordingly. But there is a lot of thought, around just the design as a whole. But I think, Anthony, at the end of the day, we are serving the function of operations. And so they own the design to a degree, in the sense of, and that's one of the things that we did. We sat down with the operations team and we said, okay, what is it you need to be successful? Where do you want this piece of equipment? I mean, it was granular, right? Yeah. And then there was also the challenge of, I'm a customer and I pull up the window. What am I looking at when I look through the drive-through window? Am I watching people? Am I looking at a piece of equipment? Am I seeing a wall with some branding? You've got to take all that into consideration, because a lot of it is A, operations, and B, is the experience. What experience are you trying to project for the customer? There's some things that maybe we've done in the past that haunt me when I see them, just because I've been in this business for 25 years. And so I understand operationally, the operations piece, but B, the customer experience piece. And, it's really interesting. McDonald's is the master of that. You and I have talked about that. I mean, they will take one piece of the equation and they'll work on it for a year. And so by the time they roll it out, they've done all the research, and it rarely fails. I mean, they're the masters, right? We're trying to do it a little bit quicker, but we want to be as masterful as we can. So I think I've taken some of that knowledge that I've learned along the journey, and applied it, and it's working. It's working great so far. So thank God. Well, you know what? I was part of a team that grew Dutch Bros from 273 locations. When I left, it was 915. They're going to finish the year out over 1,000. The programs we put in place on the development side catapulted that growth. And I learned so much. I always say, what makes you an expert is, or what gives you expertise is your failures. It's not your successes.
That's right.
Because you forget about those really quickly. But your failures, man, you remember. So I embrace failures as an opportunity to learn. And man, like I said, I've learned a lot in these almost 60 years of life. I've had a lot of failures. So
I noticed a couple of things you guys are doing different in your drive-throughs. You've got a lot of handhelds where people are actually going out there and talking to the customer. Yes. And do a little bit different than the drive-through speaker that you see in some of the drive-through brands. Talk to me a little bit about that. What's the conscious decision there, and why? What does that do for your brand?
That's a great question. I appreciate that. It's customer engagement, right?
Nice.
You go to any quick service, and listen, a lot of that is thanks to Chick-fil-A. Chick-fil-A has pretty much redefined the customer experience out in the drive-through area. And that's Dutch Bros follows that rule. Swig follows that rules. There's a couple other brands that are starting to do the same. I mean, listen, we live in a pretty technological age where, listen, I go to the airport, you punch a button on the machine, it gets you your coffee. You never talk to a person. It's cool to watch the robotics work and everything. But at the end of the day, people need that engagement. I need it. That's why I think you and I have such a great relationship together is, you need to be able to sit down and talk to people in your industry, and talk to your customers, find out how their day is going, tell them a joke, hear a joke, whatever. I mean, I just think that is just the important part of life. And we're kind of missing that. And so, Swig embraces that and embraces the idea of, I always say, it sounds really funny. Just love. I mean, it sounds, I'm a product of the 70s, the early 60s, late 70s. And that was kind of the theme around that time, right? Remember all those stickers and the
Yeah.
flowers and all that. But there's something to be said about that. We laughed about it in the 80s and 90s, and now it's kind of coming full circle, right?
Yeah.
So
There's something about being greeted and walked through or help you make decision logic that's different than staring at a menu board and a speaker that comes at you. The folks, I happen to go to our Portillo's right around the corner here from where I live. And, sometimes I'll ask them, I normally get this. I want to try something different today. What's your favorite? And like, I enjoy that. One, because I think they come out and greet me earlier in the line than I would to get up to a speaker. One, when I get to the window, it feels like it happens more thoroughly, right? I also feel like there's a person there who goes through my order and they repeat it back. I can pay for it all there at my window. I'm not trying to reach out to something. There's actually an experience I have that's easier use there that I didn't expect, but it's enjoyable.
yeah.
And I feel like they can get more people through the drive-through because of that. They're getting to me earlier, and it gives them a little bit more time to set that order up and get me through a little bit faster. So I think all of that's stuff that we're learning how to master that, and some of those great brands out there are doing that, and I think that's fun to watch us go through that. So now you've got your end caps. Talk to me a little bit about your ground up buildings. What are the formulas for the ground up buildings? I've noticed some stick build. I saw some containers. I've noticed a bunch of different tries at it. And anything that you're seeing or thinking about maybe where you're going, have you guys settled on that, or are you still doing some discovery?
So you know what? They have tried the container model. It actually worked fairly well. Again, it's a container. There's limitations. I'll give you a great example. We need about 10-foot clearance for our ice machine. The reason why, it's got the two heads, you've got your fallout unit, and you have the legs, right? And the reason you have the legs on it is so you can actually wheel a ice bin underneath, pull a lever or scoop it out, and it's right there. Versus the old days of bending all way over and kind of scooping it out and then bringing it back. It sounds great. It's all those stupid bend, lawsuits, God bless them, but they're all for a good thing. So, but with the modular units and with the container units, there's limitations. There's just always limitations, right? And with a stick built, you can say, hey, we're going to build it the way we need to build it to fit all the parameters. We're a little under 900 square feet right now, which is great. We're on about a third of an acre, which has its advantages and disadvantages. The advantages are there's a lot of sites out there that are just tight, that these landlords have this piece of land, they can't do anything with it, and they're trying to say, who's going to go in here? The downside is if it's a new development, developers like, I don't want to give up a third of an acre, and especially I don't want a 900 square foot building on there. Nobody's going to use it if you bail out, right? And so it's kind of that catch-22. The part of the advantage we have though with kind of a smaller lot and a smaller building, there's all these shopping centers across the nation that have these huge parking lots. In the old days, they would build the old days, right? 25 years ago, they would build the shopping centers with parking for 300 cars or some god awful amount. But we're able to go in there and do a carve out, right? And so they're able to make a little bit of money on the pads that are possibly available, and we won't block their anchor tenant. And so a lot of these developers or shopping centers are like, hey, we want you to come in. You're going to be bringing in 500 potential customers a day to your site. We want to be a part of that, and maybe capture that. So it's a win-win for everybody in those situations.
Well, I think it's going to be interesting as we start to see driverless cars, right? I mean, now all of a sudden you got these parking lots with 300 spots in them. Now all of a sudden we have driverless cars. As we start to look at these shopping centers, I mean, how many of them do we need? If a car's picking me up and dropping me off, or maybe taking me to Swig and picking up a drink, or going through a drive-through, maybe I don't need 300. And now all of a sudden, I think there's going to be the next 5 years, you're going to see a big push to take those parking lots as driverless cars start to come into play. You're right. I have an older crowd that has more accessibility to a location. I have a younger crowd that has more accessibility to a location that, plus I don't have all those cars that are only used for an hour a day. right?
Exactly.
I mean, as a society, we
Healthy.
look at
Yeah.
our vehicles and how much we actually use them. I mean, I love I love my Tesla car. I love it.
Yeah.
I love driving it. It makes me feel great. But the truth is, maybe I'm in the car for under an hour a day.
Yeah. That's the truth.
Yeah.
And it does. If you look at it, it's really interesting. You look at it from that perspective, that's the direction we need to go, is driverless cars. But the freedom piece that is instilled in our head is like, man, I will never give up my own personal vehicle. But maybe it's a different type of vehicle, right? Um, listen, I could name plenty of advantages of driverless cars, but like I said, I think getting Americans to buy into that is going to be really hard, myself included. So I mean, I'm
Yeah.
part of that. So it'll be interesting to see what unfolds here in the next 10,
Well,
15, 20 years.
look, all of a sudden, the things I can do in a car that I couldn't do before. I mean, just imagine get rid of the steering wheel. I was talking to a guy the other day about imagine being picked up at 7 o'clock at night, sleeping in a car, watching TV, having entertainment, sleeping in a car, taking a shower, getting dressed, and waking up in New York. Like
Yeah.
all of a sudden, I could be the things I could do in a vehicle that I could not do before, or transportation. There's just so many things that are coming down without that. So I don't want to take off that tangent. I think there's a whole nother thing, but the parking lot. So as we start to look at the opportunity for parking lots, and maybe those developers are looking at going, all right, now I'm going to have all these. It just comes to say we're going to have these big parking lots that we might have to deal with, and I think there's an interesting conversation there.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. Like I said, just again, this whole world is going to change, whether we want to or not. I just don't know how that's going to affect. Hey, honestly, I don't know how it's going to affect business. Are people going to say, "Hey, I'm going to go to Swig in my driverless car"? Maybe they won't. I don't know what that's gonna how that's going to play across the nation. So listen, I'm a big believer in just pivoting, right? I've talked an obstacle. You can go over it, under it, around it, or through it, right? But you better be able to pivot because
Well, I mean,
yeah,
imagine Swig coming to you. Like all of a sudden, that drink being made in the car on the way to your house. Now, that's a whole nother. I saw someone. There's a pizza company that's working on that now. 8-minute delivery. You can have, your pizza order online, and it makes pizzas on the way to your house. Imagine 8-minute
wow,
delivery for pizza. You can't even wash your hands that fast. But
yeah,
so I think there's a whole bunch coming down the pipeline. We'll get in there. I want to get back into construction. So now, base building. Now you've got ground up building, stick build. Now, having a consistent model, I think that does a lot of things. Let's talk about why having a consistent building type and what that does for the consistency of your development schedule, right? Your construction
yeah,
schedule as you start to get a more predictable, turnover date. So we know that having a predictable construction project gets to understand it's, the things we're going to go through, when we're going to do inspections, how we know we're behind, as opposed to having these one-off buildings all the time. Let's talk a little bit about that. Why having a predictable building makes a predictable schedule and a predictable turnover, and how you guys are figuring that out.
yeah. It's really interesting. There's a few things in there. A is economies of scale, right? If we can leverage more the right materials and things of that nature that are consistent across the brand, we can obviously A, keep them in stock, B, save money. Um, as far as the having production drawings and production building and things of that nature, it sets a GC up for success. We've done this enough time. We find the right GCs. We always say, I don't like the idea of a vendor relationship. I want a partnership. And I've been very blessed in this industry to have great partnerships with general contractors that know the expectations, right? And that nail those every time. And if there's ever a problem, guess what? They know what they did because they've built enough of them.
Right.
I know what they did. One of the things we started doing before I left Dutch Bros was we started putting cameras on sites. We could track what was going on. If something looked off on the camera, we could make a quick phone call and get things back on track. But we know now what it takes to get a building delivered in the time frame. So, and I think that if something is not going right on a build, typically the first person I look at is myself. I say, hey, what didn't I do? Did I not give right direction? Did I not set the expectation correctly? Did I not provide the right materials? Did I, um, our partnership vendors or partners not doing what they're supposed to do, and it delayed the general contractor? So, I think it's constantly kind of just reevaluating those and tweaking them and adjusting them so that every job the flow starts getting easier and easier. And I think that's, I kind of going back, and I know I've talked a lot about Dutch Bros. I've been with Swig about, this will be my 10th week, but, we set everything up so that, we were able to grow that brand from 18 when I was there. The first year I think we did 42, 72, 99, 135, and they're ending this year at 165. So, I mean, it was a pretty rapid growth, but a lot of that was because we had production drawings, we had partner architects, and we talked a little bit about this, having the same architects build for us and not having them go out to 15 or 20 architects. Now, I haven't worked in a franchise driven brand in several years, trying to get the franchisees to understand that, hey, this is what I've done my whole life, especially if they're operators. A lot of them don't understand development. Let our team help guide you. There's a reason we have these architects in place. There's a reason we have these GCs. They go, well, they're my brother-in-law's,
Yeah.
as an architect, he can do the same thing. Can he? I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not saying he can't, but at the end of the day, this is what works, and this is why it works. And it's not always about the dollar, because you're going to pay now or you're going to pay later. You're going to pay.
You're going to pay.
So,
that's where we've been plagued up until now, is that the short-sighted thinking that, hey, I get this architect for $17 less or whatever, $1,700 less. It comes out in the back end when we got a set of plans that's not to spec or company production, or they're not up to date with all the changes that are happening, or they can't deliver. When we get a predictable deliverable, right? When I know that this architect can deliver a set of plans in 3 weeks, I can be in for permit, and I've got a final set of drawings. My permit, I can start on that permit process and get that next 4 weeks to be able to get to permit. When I know they do a great set of plans that'll go through the permitting department well, that permit department doesn't hold it up for 6, 8, 10, 12. I've had projects where the wrong architect doesn't get how to do plan review and doesn't understand the plan review process, that, we get plan review questions back, and then all of a sudden they don't answer them for a week or two. It's like, hey man, as soon as that set of plans gets into the building department, that's the next most important thing in the world, because now I'm lining up the construction team to be able to have a predictable start date. And I think therein lies where the short-sighted thinking, hey, I found a guy for $1,700 cheaper, all of a sudden costs me $17,000 more, and my predictable deliverable. And that's where I think when I look at your systems, you've got this, the partnership with general contractors is a beautiful one, right? The industry has been plagued by this whole bid process. Like, somewhere we believe that by bidding it out to 5 different general contractors, now all of a sudden I've got a group of people who, look for us as a GC, we have 3 people for every line item. Let's say that a Swig's got, let's call it 50 line items. If I've got 3 subs at every line item, it costs each one of those subs, call it $1,000 to bid for me. They got to get the plans. They got to go to the supplier. They got to spend some time bidding it. Electrician, plumber, HVAC, carpet guy. That might be $150,000 per bid in sub time. That's not necessarily costing me, but it's costing my subcontractors and the industry. Right now, we got 5 GCs bidding on it. That's $700,000 of time spent in the construction industry. Somewhere that's got to get paid for, right? And the inefficiencies of that. So as we start to reframe and create partnerships, and I'm not saying, hey, we shouldn't have GCs that shouldn't have some control on it, but I think it becomes clear that there's a right price, and it'll actually lower when we start to partner with people a little bit smarter. And so I think there's something we're not seeing quite yet. We're starting to see the impact of our old ways of being on cost.
No doubt. It's funny you say that. I have these conversations with GCs all the time, and they say it's a minimum of $5,000 for me to bid a project. So
Yeah.
if I bid 3 projects and I don't get any of them, because I spent $15,000 and I've got to come the money I got to have to come up with. So he goes, on the next bid, you're going to pay that $15,000. I mean, that's the reality of it, right? Again, I don't want to do that. I don't want to have, here's the one thing when you're in business. I mean, I had GCs reach out to me every week, not a GC, 2, 3, 150 a year, without exaggeration.
Yeah. You're right.
I'm really good at saying no. And it's not because, it's not because I'm trying to be a jerk about it. I know it's right for the brand, and I can decipher through fairly quickly. I'll give you a great example. I attend a lot of conferences a year, and I will have a vendor, trying to get our work. I ask them to tell me a little bit about their brand and what they're doing and what they do better than anybody else, right? Literally within not even under 5 minutes, I will say to them, I can't use your company. And here's why. And so I go, so there's no need to sell me because I'm not going to move forward. But tell me about your family, right? And the reason I do that is I may not be able to use their service, but I am listening.
That's right.
And I'm thinking maybe there's somebody else in the business that will reach out to me and go, hey, do you know anybody that does this? And so I'm able to refer people, and I've done it throughout my career. And just because I'm not going to use it doesn't mean that I'm not going to hold that information close and maybe turn you on to somebody else, or have one of my, even a competitor, because I talk with all my competitors as well, possibly use your service. My time is valuable. Your time is valuable. Getting to know fast is something I think that is extremely important in business. We don't do it enough.
Yeah.
And I want to digress really quickly. One of the things you ask about is how you get prepared on the real estate side. When we sign an LOI, we order a SIR, site investigation report. We order a title report. We order an Alta survey. We order, did I say environmental report? We order those 4 reports. We're $25,000 in, and we're just looking at a site. We haven't even signed the deal. But what that does is it gives us enough information that, it allows us to create a better pro forma when we're presenting it to the real estate committee. But it's also, if we walk away, we walk away from $25,000. We're not walking away from $500,000 mistake,
Sure.
which I've done in my career, right? Maybe not that expensive, but I've made some errors because I didn't have the right data. And you want to, go ahead.
Well, can we look at that real quick? Because I think that,
Yeah.
I don't want to jump over that, because I think it's a really crucial part of looking at a real estate deal, right? I mean, I think that you've got this. So folks, I want you to really get this. When Daniel is talking about is there's a process by which they go through, right? So a letter of intent says, hey, Mr. Landlord, we're intending on renting your space. And based on these criteria, and here's what we're willing to, here's kind of our proposal to you, right? And that's a start. Now, before you get to that point, Daniel, you guys have already had some logic. You've already thought through some of this. You're ready to spend that $25,000. You feel good enough about the deal to spend the $25,000. You're not just doing this in the dark. You've already got an initial understanding, somewhat of initial, maybe not 100% of the initial idea, but you're willing to say, hey, look, if worst case scenarios, I'm going to spend the $25,000 here. And in order to minimize dead deal cost, what logic are you using to make sure that, all right, we've had an initial conversation, our operations team's already seen it. What's the criteria you get to before you sign that LOI?
Yeah, so obviously we're looking at all the data we talked about on the demographic side, and traffic patterns, things on that front. So we are trying to determine, hey, is this really a place we want to go? We won't even sign an LOI. We've probably been a little bit looser at that at Swig, but we're tightening that up at the moment. But we don't want to sign an LOI unless we're ready to move forward, right? Because at the end of the day, we want the right deal in the right location. The LOI doesn't necessarily lock it in, but it gets us a little closer. We talked a little earlier about getting to know faster. Once we have the LOI in place, we pull the data together that we talked about. We want to get to know faster. So if we come back and we're like, hey, this doesn't quite match up. Maybe it's a dirty site or whatever. We want to get out of that deal as fast as we can. It does 2 things. A, it actually assists the landlord. We've probably done some work that maybe he didn't do, Maybe he didn't know what easements were crossing his property. Listen, not every landlord is a savvy developer. It could be a family land in a family trust or something of that nature. We give them enough information to be able to say, hey, maybe this deal wasn't the right deal for you, but now you have this data, go make a better deal. So the next person in line is gonna understand what it is they're getting into. Now, is that maybe counterintuitive to business? Maybe it is, but you know what? Is it the right thing to do? Always. And I think at the end of the day, in this business or in any other business, you have to do the right thing. Andrew Smith is the owner of Savory Funds, and I've talked quite a bit. And he said, Dan, he said, we need to share best practices with everybody in this industry. He goes, there is nothing that anybody is doing, especially on the development side. There's nothing anybody is doing that is proprietary. You may want to believe it is. It's not proprietary. I can go stand in front of any restaurant chain there is today, watch what's going on in their kitchen, talk to their employees, and find out exactly what it is they're doing. So at the end of the day, really, there's nothing proprietary on the restaurant front, right? I think it's how you deliver. It's the simple things, Anthony. It's it's cleanliness, it's customer service, it's marketing. And I think in the end, it's just serving a great product. And I mean, if you just have those things kind of in play, hopefully your business will do well. There's other factors out there that I've seen great businesses go out of business. It's unfortunate. There are other factors, and most of the time it's poor money management. But like I said, I think there's nothing that's really proprietary in this business or the next, unless it's a technology.
Right. I think that money management is a big deal. And when you guys go through and do that site analysis step, I can't tell you how many deals that I've walked into where someone says, oh, they take it as is. Now, all of a sudden, you mentioned the word dirty site. Now you've got a buried something or an easement. The building can't get there. I can't get the parking count. There's all the things that could affect the deal actually falling apart, even after you've spent, you've taken on, I've got guys who signed leases on a piece of dirt that they can't get a deal done on. And the hundreds of thousands of dollars, we just had one on a brand that's a really popular brand that they didn't see that there was a lease restriction on the product type they were using, right? There wasn't a real estate analysis or legal analysis of the existing deals, and the landlord himself didn't see that there was exclusions by a brand on the other side of the mall that all of a sudden said, you can't put, this company's key product in there. And, we were already at putting footings down. I mean, we're in the construction deal. We got construction fences up. We've got footings down. We're starting on underground. You imagine how much money we spent at this point. We paid, for the initial analysis, we've paid for. So all of those things are designed to keep from having that dead deal cost, which that's what happens to that brand. They end up having this dead deal cost. I think the way that you look at it with that analysis work where you're all right, look, I've got an LOI. If we're going to do an LOI, we're going to be ready to spend $25,000. Now we may get done spending that $25,000 because now I can give you a better sense of the budget because I now understand the dirt, the utilities, the timing, all of the things that come from the information that's gathered by that initial analysis work.
Yes. No, it's, I'm just going to repeat it for a third time, and I apologize, but it's that getting to know quickly, right? Listen, we have signed some LOIs and leases, even here, but over my career that I'm like, I don't know how we're gonna get this done. I've had projects sit for a year because of utilities, right? Because we couldn't get through a shopping center's, parking lot, and our building is sitting at the back of the parking lot. And so we had to find a way to go all the way around the parking lot that cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars. And it was just a poor lease. And we didn't look at it from the correct perspective. One of the pieces that you brought up was just having the right person reading the lease documents. Hire an attorney, hire a real estate attorney. They will create an abstract for you. They will give you guidance. I've seen really, really good deals go sideways because somebody thought, I'm going to save a few dollars and not engage an attorney. as smart as I think I am, I always
Yeah.
engage an attorney
Yeah.
because there's something I'm not seeing, right? There's something I'm not seeing. So,
Well, just the complexity of the deal and just the way that they can articulate language better than we can. We see it one way, but the way they can create exclusions and inclusions and making sure that they're holding the landlord accountable for our ability to operate business there. I think all of that is absolutely true. Taking that off, and by the way, that takes the focus off of us looking at that deal. Now we're able to go look at the construction side with more. So now you get through. The initial analysis work. Now you get together a final budget. Now you're in construction. How predictable is your construction schedule?
that's a great question. Right now in this industry, the utility portion is just crushing the business, right? There's a lot of changes jurisdictionally. Here's what happened. I think COVID. We're still feeling the effects of COVID, whether you want to believe it or not. A lot of the old timers, I'll call them, have retired. Men and women that understood the business of general contracting and understood construction, and you could go in there and at least plead a case that would allow some opportunity for discussion. I think today, people have a manual out in front of them. They're looking at, this is what the book says, and you go in and you try to have a conversation. They go, well, but they just keep referring back to the book. They don't have real world experience, real field experience, things of that nature. And listen, it's not because they're bad people. It's because of just the state of the world over the last 4 years.
Yeah.
And they just need, I always say, a few gray hairs, or, I'm missing some hair, maybe some hair falling out. But the thing is at the end of the day, you need to be able to have some knowledge to pull from. And I think that we're putting people in, by the way, in all roles, not just in city, we're putting people in places of position, authority, or expertise that maybe don't necessarily have the real world experience. And I think that right now that's kind of plaguing our industry. We've talked in the past just about master plumbers, master electricians, things of that nature. There's maybe a handful left in the United States. And I think that there's a lot of people that can do plumbing. There's a lot of people that can, manage the electrical, and they're licensed and they're bonded, they're insured. But again, we have this old saying. Years ago, I worked for a waste hauling company. Fantastic job, by the way. Making money, taking people's stuff away. But we called our mechanics parts replacers because they weren't certified mechanics. They would just replace parts. Now it's working. Now the truck's working. And it was kind of a internal joke, but there was a lot of truth to that, right? I appreciate the diligence of them getting there and trying to figure out what it was, but they wasted time and money trying to figure out what was wrong with the engine. And had they just done real diagnostics, maybe we wouldn't have had that issue. And I'm not saying that to be derogatory. That's just real world. I've been guilty of it, right? At the end of the day, you need the experts. You need to lean into the experts to get the job done. So
Interesting. So, you're now on board at Swig. What do you see the future? What's the biggest items you're working on now to kind of line up for your massive growth? I mean, this is an exciting time for the brand, exciting time for you. As you're building this new team. What are the big things that you're seeing in your immediate future?
Yeah, right now, honestly, we're just going through all the processes. You said it earlier. The processes will get you from point A to point B. We're trying to fine tune those, and that's everything. That's looking at every MSA, master service agreement that we write, every contract that we write, every LOI we write, every lease we write, every vendor we use. Kind of looking at all the vendor agreements. So we're kind of getting all that aligned right now. It's a big task when you come into a company, especially. I have my way of doing things. Everybody has their way of doing it. Trying to marry those two is not always easy, but I am trying to be respectful of how they've done it in the past. But at the same time, I know how to get us to the next step, and so I'm trying to manipulate's the wrong word. I'm trying to influence change, influence change in the business so that we can grow the brand to 1,400 shops, and I think it's achievable. right? We're looking at completing about 25 projects this year. We're going to complete about probably 35 next year, and then we'll probably take a bigger leap, and then we're just going to start, putting the pedal to the metal. So because we're trying to get to 1,400 shops in 8 years, that's hard to do unless we're cranking some shops out.
Well, I
So
mean, you've got a clean shop. You may be making some dirty soda, but you guys
exactly.
you've got a pretty amazing idea. I imagine the margin's got to be pretty decent. And when I watch the look on my daughter's face, and when I look at your social media and the craving, right? My daughter wants me to build one here. She's like, Dad, you got to build one here. She wants one here in Oak Park, Illinois. She's just, it's amazing how you've created.
We're
You're
working
at,
on
yeah, you're on a craveable product. You're down there, building this thing. I think it's for sure. You've got the road in front of you, and Dan, I know you've built some big brands, so they've got a champion in you, and exciting to watch what happens. I want you guys to come on every time you guys break through another hurdle. I'd love for you to talk to me when you get 200 stores and 500 stores, and just as you continue to break through these hurdles and do this and bring this exciting brand to our country.
I appreciate that very much. Remember I said earlier, what makes you an expert is your failures. I'll sure have plenty of failures along the way. We can talk about those, and but again, it'll be for the much bigger picture. So I appreciate that very much.
Yeah, it's an amazing product, and it's exciting that the world's seeing other ways rather than just drinking booze to have
Yeah.
some enjoyment. Right, this is a creative way of creating new drinks and new ideas. Again, like you did with Dutch Brothers, where you're heading off to with this brand. Exciting time to be there. I'm so grateful to have you on the show today.
I appreciate it very much, Anthony. Always a pleasure. I love what the Future Factory is doing. I think just for the industry as a whole. I mean, it is pretty amazing to kind of see what the people you've had on and the direction this business is going. And when we're long gone from here, people are going to refer back to they remember that guy in the Future Factory. I've seen all those podcasts. No, it'll be good stuff. So
Well, let's see what happens. I'm grateful. Thanks for being on today.
thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Hey,
I,
audience, if you could just take a second. Last week we had over 5,000 downloads. It was amazing downloads last week, and how many people came on and watched the show. But I noticed that something like there was a lot of you that made it. There was 40% of you that made it to the end of the show that weren't subscribers, and I'm like, huh. If you could take a second right now and just like and subscribe, it helps us get amazing guests like Daniel from Swig, right? And find us the amazing people in this country that are moving and shaking our development and construction world. It also means the world to everybody in the background, Joe and Alyssa and Connor, all the folks that put the show together. They work tirelessly to find us great guests and bring people on. So if you could do that now, I would be extremely grateful. And as always, thanks for listening.